I'm going to turn it over to Representative Kail. I mean, again, Josh, you've got a ton going on, in the General Assembly, taking on all the efforts, the shale cracker right in your backyard. You're seeing firsthand what's happening in Beaver County. Once again, all this has to be happening pre-COVID. COVID hits, and again, you're still seeing opportunities. And if I'm not mistaken, folks are knocking on your door. So walk us through what you're seeing today and what went into creating of, the Commonwealth's COVID comeback, sir.
Thank you, George. Thank you for having me here. I want to just reiterate something that Jeff said, because I think it's absolutely critical to everything that we're trying to do here. And it's one of the reasons why I'm extremely supportive of the energy industry and manufacturing and construction. We want to get jobs to Pennsylvania. I want to see my kids' generation be able to stay here, and I want to see them be able to prosper here and pursue their God-given talents in Western Pennsylvania. I'm one of 7. I saw my siblings spread across the country because the opportunity wasn't here. And when we say we want jobs here, then it needs to not just be jobs, it needs to be the right kind of jobs. And it needs to be jobs that pay. And if you see the industries that provide those types of jobs, it really makes sense to be facilitating job growth in energy and manufacturing and development. I've seen it in the 15th district where I reside, which is Beaver and Washington counties. The Shell petrochemical plant is being developed there now. Before the pandemic, there was 8,500 members of unions working and building that plant. And a foreman for the steam fitters was making on average about $180,000 if you put together all their wages for the year. Rank and file members were making over 6 figures. So those types of numbers came not because they're artificially manipulated, not because the government forced a wage increase, nothing of that sort. It was because the market dictated it in those types of industries. And we have in Pennsylvania a tremendous opportunity to lead the way in those industries again. And the COVID crisis just kind of highlighted that for us. A lot of these issues that we went over were stuff that we talked about before COVID. It was deficiencies within Pennsylvania's system that we understood before COVID hit us. COVID coming, I think, has renewed a sense of urgency. We need to focus on jobs. We need the right kind of jobs coming to Pennsylvania, and we need to create an environment where companies are going to come in and invest. So about 6 months ago, or back in June, I believe it was, a group of us from southwestern Pennsylvania got together. And, this was really the time when we were doing a lot of back and forth with the governor about what industry could open, what industry couldn't open. And a group of us thought about, what's this going to look like after the COVID? What's Pennsylvania's market going to look like? We should start preparing for that. And that was really the seed for this plan. And a lot of these ideas, again, aren't stuff that are new or aren't things that you haven't heard of. For instance, we have regulatory reform, a deemed approved bill that Jonathan Fritz will talk about. It's his bill. It's just a huge deal for making things more efficient. Like Jeff said, we believe in regulations doing an oversight, but we want to make sure it's efficient for our companies. We want to make sure it's done the right way. We have tax reforms. We have incentives for manufacturers, which is my bill. It's about reshoring critical supply chain that we saw that we're too dependent on foreign nations. I think that's one of the things that's been highlighted across the country over the last 7 or 8 months. Is, it's not just a jobs issue that manufacturers have been shipped overseas, although it is. And Western Pennsylvania, in fact, most of the state of Pennsylvania has been hit dramatically over the past 40 years by manufacturers going overseas. But now we're seeing that it is indeed a national security issue. And so there's a renewed focus on reshoring those manufacturers to get them back to the United States. Pennsylvania is I firmly believe this, is very well positioned to bring those manufacturers back. We have the old brownfields. We have the natural resources. We have the natural gas, obviously. We have the workforce. And that's the type of things that we need to facilitate so that when developers and people are coming and looking, hey, where can we build these manufacturing plants? I think we got a lot to market. I think one of our major deficiencies is Harrisburg, and we need to fix those problems in Harrisburg. And that's what we're trying to do with this package of bills. Also, Representative Reese, it's a workforce development resolution and a study that he's going to lead that's critical for the future of advanced manufacturing and bringing the trades together along with our universities and technology. I think it's just absolutely essential. And the last piece I hadn't mentioned yet is a COVID liabilities bill. The last 6 or 7 months, we have seen our small businesses, big businesses, healthcare providers, whoever, really get touched up and hit hard during this crisis. We had to make sacrifices. They had to make major sacrifices. We were operating under certain assumptions, and nobody really understood completely the best way to do much of anything at the start of this, and opinions changed and standards of care changed throughout the process. It was very fluid, as they said. I don't think it makes sense that after really causing a lot of damage to our economy the last 8 months, that we let trial attorneys damage our economy for the next 20 years. I think we need a COVID liabilities bill, not people that were doing things that were willfully incorrect, but people that were just trying to figure it out, and maybe the standard of care that they were using ended up changing, and there's all kinds of technicalities we could get into from a lawyer's perspective that I won't bore you with, but that's a critical issue as well. So the basic premise of this package of bills, I think, can be summed up in this. We are trying to leverage and maximize our resources that we have in Pennsylvania while also fixing our deficiencies. And it's things that we have been talking about. It's regulatory reform, tax reform, but I think the COVID crisis has brought about a brand new, renewed focus on getting jobs here, good paying jobs that are going to be from construction and building trades, jobs where kids don't need to really get drowned in debt, and they can still make a good living. And we have the opportunity to really promote that and advance that. And that's what we're trying to do.
Well, Josh, I mean, your timing couldn't be any better. Again, you know, you take what you're seeing, because if I'm not mistaken, I mean, with the shell cracker in your district, I mean, it's expected already that businesses will be looking at you, looking at your territory. Are you seeing that? How much of that might have played into, you know, the overall effort to attract the businesses here?
That's I've been seeing that since I got elected into office, and even a little bit before that, to be frank. I've talked to a number of people that were talking about buying property so that they can build manufacturing plants. And in Western Pennsylvania, out here, we're right on the border of Ohio. My district is on the border almost of Ohio. It is on the border of West Virginia. It's the thin panhandle there. And, you know, they talk to us and tell us, you know, Pennsylvania's, it's great, your guys' natural resources. We love the idea of using natural gas from the Northeast and having a manufacturing plant in the Northeast, using that natural gas, and then selling the goods in the Northeast. So everything is very vertically integrated. It's a phenomenal, you know, concept. We have so many opportunities for that. But what I hear from people is pretty uniformly, one, our tax code is a real problem, and two, that our regulatory schemes are real problems. And you know where it's not as big of a problem is Steubenville, Ohio, which is right across the border, and also in Weirton, West Virginia, which is right there. And it's the same workforce, but Pennsylvania misses out. So they love our workforce up here. I can't tell you how complimentary our Shell has been about the building trades. And they were very nervous about that when they first came up. They weren't sure, you know, how this was going to really play out, and they were nervous about that type of cost, but they have been very, very pleased with the level of professionalism, the efficiency that they've seen out of our building trades. And they've been telling everybody that. I've been at different places where I've heard them say it. publicly. But yes, so these ideas, it started before COVID, where I was seeing people looking for downstream opportunity, looking to build manufacturers in this northeast part of the country. Um, and they love the idea of that we have these railroads and the rivers and the brownfield sites where, you know, you can basically fix a site up and repurpose a site, and you have the rail there and the river there and the highway there. But the deficiencies that I just talked about with regulatory reform and tax issues are serious, and they are in fact keeping people away. And you know, Mr. O'Brien said this the other day at the press conference. I thought it was really fascinating. Is that even though you know, we have one of the highest corporate tax rates in the country. I think we're number 2 or 3 or something as far as on the wrong side of it. Even though the effective tax rate is not nearly as high as what the actual announced tax rate is, which is like 9.9%, it doesn't matter. People see those numbers, and it's just that's it. That's a game changer. And we got to get serious about it now. We need these jobs because we have a public fisc problem with the COVID issue. We got a $5 billion shortfall. We got to start working towards rebuilding that. And the fundamentals have changed a little bit because of the crisis that we've seen. And the sense of urgency has certainly changed. And now is the time to get very serious about making these changes. And, you know, we got a lot of positive attributes here in Pennsylvania, our workforce, our natural resources, but we got to fix these things if we really want to get these jobs here in Pennsylvania.
And I'm just curious, Josh, not so much flack, but I'm curious as to what you're hearing from, you know, folks that weren't involved on the event on the 14th. I mean, it's clear that, you know, we see this as a bipartisan effort. It needs to make certain that Pennsylvania moves forward. So you did a wonderful job. You got folks all on the different bills that represent the Commonwealth. What are you hearing from folks that weren't at the event on the 14th, and how's that feedback been going for yourself?
It's been going well. I mean, you know, everybody is on board with good paying jobs, right? I mean, you're not going to have many people disagree with that. I know Representative Reese noted this at the actual event, and I can confirm it just with my conversations with colleagues from the other side of the aisle since the event. There is excitement coming from that side of the aisle as well about moving the Commonwealth forward. And, you know, there's going to be issues for both sides that they may not, it may not be ideal, but everyone's recognizing that this is a package that's going to move us forward to a place where we need to go. And I think it's absolutely, people are getting excited. I think you're going to see bipartisan support. And it's going to be front and center as we go forward into next session. I do want to say one other thing, just commenting on what Jeff said. He made a great point about the pollution that we're seeing in China and India and the development that we're seeing there. And I think it really relates to bringing our manufacturing jobs here. I think there is a very, very strong environmental argument for having our manufacturing done in the United States, and I would argue in Pennsylvania. And I told this to Penn, what was the name? What's the Penn Future? That's the one that no one's out there boycotting plastic, right? No one's out there saying, you know, they don't want their cell phones anymore, or they don't want the plexiglass that's going to be used to separate people at restaurants, right? Like, no one's out there saying realistically that we can live without fossil fuels. I mean, people are saying it in a general sense, but to really nail it down, it's not realistic. But one of the advantages that we have in Pennsylvania is that we do have Penn Future, that we do have someone that's going to be looking at it. There is going to be some level of oversight independent of government agencies. And I told this to Penn Future. I said, I don't think there's any China future. My guess is they'd be 6 feet under if they tried. So, I mean, it's something where it's actually a win-win situation for us. And the last time I checked, we all live in the same world. And so you want to talk about global macro issues. It all affects us. So let's do it here where we can watch it here and we can enjoy the jobs here. The false dichotomy that's been created that it's either environment or jobs is garbage. It's complete garbage, and it's something that the energy industry has shown to be garbage, and we can do it too with the manufacturing industry as we bring it back to the United States. I think it's important to note that once you get beyond the initial, the stakeholders on the other side of these issues and actually talk to people, even people engaged with them. When I had a conversation with Penn Future, I mentioned all the positive environmental impacts that Shell coming here had, and they were real. And there was a zinc plant where Shell was, and they tried planting thousands of pine trees right beside this zinc plant, and all the pine trees died. The whole thing, just the project totally failed because of the pollution that was coming from this smelter plant. And as I was saying that story, explaining the Penn Future, like, this is why, we should do this so we can clean these old sites and we can stop pollution and we can do things right here. The individual who is from my district, that's also a member of Penn Future, was like, yeah, I remember that because I was on the crew that planted the pine trees. And he was like, you're right. Like, it makes sense because people on the ground actually dealing with the consequences of what we're talking about. It makes sense. It's common sense, it's logical, and it's creating wins across the board. And I know today it's hard to imagine where both sides can win, and it's not just a one side win, the other side loses. But this is one of those instances where it really does create situations where we're winning, and the whole state's winning, and the Commonwealth is going to win because we're pushing forward this type of agenda.